This video is about regrouting a swimming pool. The reason we made this video is because we found it difficult to find anything on YouTube that specifically fitted the type of pool and the needs that we had. This is our experience only, and it's what we decided to do. However, please use this as information only and do your own research as well, as we did. We are located on the Costa Blanca, east coast of Spain. We have a traditional mosaic tiled pool. The villa was built in 1985, which means the swimming pool is nearly 40 years old.
6 months after purchasing this villa in 2016, we had the swimming pool regrouted by a local contractor. It cost just under €900 at the time. But over the last couple of years, the pool had become very tired. So in 2023, we looked into the cost of having the work done again.
Asking around, the prices seems to have almost doubled for a similar job. So we decided to do it ourselves. So one of the main reasons was the cost, and we're both quite practical DIYers, and we felt we were more than capable of doing it. In addition to that, there was a weak area by the steps where the water retains itself within the steps and it seeps out as the pool empties. And this was a fault line that when the pool was emptied and the contractor started work, it continued to seep out for a very, very long time, even before they started re-grouting. Anyway, he reassured me it wouldn't be a problem. But it was a problem, and it failed fairly quickly after it was refilled. About 6 months later, one of the tiles lifted. So I was conscious to try and make sure that we did a better job of dealing with that problem area at the base of the steps. So just to clarify, the steps that we have were quite traditional, and they tend to hold water. So when you drain a pool to re-grout, that water has to seep out of those steps, comes out wherever there's a crack, etc. This is where this fault was, and it created quite a large crack. And I wanted to try and make sure that that was dug up properly and redone properly. So that was the other main reason why I wanted to do it myself. I had the time to do it properly, whereas the contractor obviously wants to be in and out and doesn't want to be hanging around for 2 or 3 weeks waiting for the steps to dry out. So that's the two reasons: financial and getting the job done to my standards, knowing there was a problem. So the next thing was to plan how we were going to do this and what materials we needed. I'd spoke to the guy who did it the first time and had his advice again as a refresher, and I also spoke to a Spanish swimming pool expert company as well here in Javier, and I got their advice. Quite different. The original contractor said that it would be more than adequate to use white cement for grouting, but the specialist pool company said no, you need to use a specialist grout, which is much stronger and will last much longer. Now, I believe the original contractor used white cement the first time, and I think that's possibly one of the reasons why it failed quite quickly. He recommended that again. I'm not sure why, but as I say, the specialist said you need to use proper grout, which is much more expensive, which is why a lot of pool people who re-grout don't use it. It's quite considerably more expensive, but I do believe it's well worth it. It seems to be a much stronger product. So you need to plan your materials. So the processes are, obviously you need to empty the pool. Be careful where you empty it to. We allowed the chlorine to dissolve fully out of this pool before we emptied it, and we emptied it into the open land at the back. If you have a waste onto the road, you might get into trouble. If you drop your swimming pool onto the road, you might get in trouble with the local council. So you need to check with them if you're permitted to do it. So that's just something to bear in mind about when you empty your pool, or more importantly, where you empty your pool to. You need to then consider a jet washer for cleaning. You need to get acid to break down the old grout, and you need to buy your new grout. And obviously, you need things like gloves, Wellington boots. You're going to get acid everywhere, which can be very, very strong, etc., etc. So the first job was to empty the pool. The second job was to buy the acid, and I'll show you up on the screen the product that we used. The acid is spread around the empty pool using a watering can running down the sides. Now, something to bear in mind, it's extremely strong and you must use the appropriate face mask and make sure you don't get it on your skin, in your eyes, etc., etc., etc. And what else you need to bear in mind is it does fume off considerably, and we had a small incident because the neighbours were in and the wind changed and it went over to the neighbour's house, so we had to quickly stop what we were doing and go and have a word with them and say, look, don't worry about this, it's only going to be happening for about 20 minutes while we do this, because after about half an hour, you have to flush it off anyway because it breaks down the grouts, the old grout, so that's why you're doing it. In hindsight, I should have done smaller amounts rather than putting the entire, I believe it's 20 litres, into the pool at one time, generating a massive amount of fumes from the acid itself. So when the pool was emptied, we used a 23 litre drum of sulfuric acid, which cost €48. That went into a watering can and was watered the walls as I walked around the pool, watering the walls. Obviously, that then runs down the walls and into the base. I was wearing overalls, gloves, face mask, a respirator, rubber Wellington boots, and as it didn't run very evenly, I also went round with a scrubbing brush and worked it into the whole area of the pool afterwards. That is supposed to stay on for 30 minutes before you wash it off. And again, as you wash it off and you dilute it with water, it becomes harmless because the quantity of water that you're diluting, that again, it could run to waste. Okay, the theory is that you remove 2 millimeters of grout. That's what we were told by various people. I just literally poured the acid on, let it stay on for 30 minutes, probably more like 45 to nearly an hour in some places, and then rinsed it off. So we went for the good grout, and I think we used 3 bags in the end for this pool, and you'll know the size because we're going to let you know all the details about that. 3 25-kilogram bags of grout, and the bags of grout were €88 each. So you can see how that's much more expensive compared to white cement, which is very, very cheap. I'm not sure exactly how much because we didn't look at it, because obviously we went to go with the good stuff.
How do you think it's going so far?
Okay. It's only 9 o'clock.
We're learning things already though. Cheers.
One thing to consider is the time of year as well, because obviously you don't want it to rain. In the summer it's too hot, I would imagine. We did it in February, which was about perfect. We had very little rain, fortunately. But in the summer it's going to be very, very hot and the grout's going to dry too quickly. Obviously in the winter it's going to be damp and therefore might not dry quickly enough. So just 2 things to bear in mind depending on what your specific climate is like. Another thing to bear in mind is the cost of refilling the pool. Obviously quite substantial. There is a lot of water in there, and the cost can be more favourable if you spread the cost over 2 bills here in Spain. So once you go over a certain cubic meterage of water purchase, the rate goes up more. So if you could span 2 months, you might save a considerable amount of money. I didn't really worry too much in the end because I couldn't figure it all out, but you might want to go to that trouble and save yourself some money. At certain times of year here in Spain, we get a lot of pollen falling off the pine trees, which are prolific around here. It's an orangey yellow dust, and that was occasionally problematic while we're trying to grout the pool because it was getting in everything. So that's something else to bear in mind potentially. We started doing the pool, and as we started and jet washed, etc., we found more and more tiles were popping up. So despite the fact that we thought we'd only have one problem to deal with by the steps where the tiles had lifted and the odd other tile that had popped up here and there was probably in total about 60 tiles that had come up once we jet washed it and acid rinsed it. So just bear in mind there's probably going to be more refixing than you anticipated. And again, I used this product recommended at the local DIY store for this, and we will show you that on screen as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. You have more sticking down to do before you can crack on and re-grout.
As well as the Polymax, Adam also used this waterproof putty, depending on the size of the repair and how the mood took him.
One problem that we encountered, the drainage which runs to waste seems to be not the lowest point of the pool. So the big plug in the middle of the pool never actually emptied. So we had to bail it out with a can. There wasn't a much bucket of water, but that was a bit annoying because we constantly had to bail it if we wanted to empty the pool. So just keep an eye on your fall. It might not be adequate like ours wasn't. It gets extremely slippery in there when you're working, especially when you're walking up and down the slope. And we both fell over quite nastily a couple of times, so that's just something to bear in mind. Another snippet we got from our local pool guy who does our neighbour's house next door. He said, when you fill it up, be very, very careful about making sure that the levels, your pH levels, are okay and your acid levels are okay on the pool as soon as you fill it. Didn't really think about this the last time it was done, and I wasn't told to do anything about it, but he said it's critical specifically to make sure that the pH level doesn't get too low, and he gave us a tip about buying the pH reducer from the local supermarket, much cheaper than buying it from the swimming pool supplier. So that's something to bear in mind. Most important, don't let the pH go too high or especially too low as well, because it will soften the grout if it hasn't had time to harden. So he said within the first month you need to be very, very careful to stick within the levels that are recommended.
Don't know why this way. There's the little things we'll never So let's go on and learn to love the little things we never want to be undone. Don't know why we're this way, but it's the little things will never change. So let's go on and learn to love the little things we never want to be undone. Don't know why we're this way, but it's the little things will never change.
Right, it's definitely recording now. So go again.
Hello. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hello. Testing testing 1 2 1 2. Hello hello.
Right, that's it. It's
Finished.
yeah, we've done. I think we've done all right. Hope if you're doing something similar, you enjoy it as much as we have. It's quite hard work, but it was rewarding. And of course, the best bit now is that we can jump in and enjoy it. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Okay, so we'll take our. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Okay, so we'll take our. Oh my God, it's good job I took the microphone off. Oh.
Well, are we swimming now?
Well, I don't see why not.